Docker Compose is really great, right? It allows you to do a lot of things, and even a developer can run a complete distributed application within their laptop, which was never possible before. I mean, possible but very difficult before. And all developer need is, they should have Docker installed in their laptop, and with a single command Docker Compose up, they can run more than one application in their laptop in a distributed way, and that is awesome, and that changed a lot. But that is not what you are using in production, right? I mean, in most of the company you are using Kubernetes in production. So with Kubernetes running in production, does Docker Compose satisfy everything that your developer need? Because there are a lot of difference between Docker Compose and Kubernetes, right? I mean, they both have a complete different architecture altogether, and Kubernetes is meant for running in production on a distributed service and such kind of architectures. And also, Kubernetes works in a different way. For example, when you want to send a communication to an application that is running in Kubernetes, you would be using some ingress solutions such as ingress, and then different tools to receive the incoming traffic. And sometimes when your application needs some configurations, for example, your shopping cart application wants to know how to talk to the database, what is the IP address of the database, what are the credentials of the database, right? Some configuration information that your application need, and Kubernetes has its own way to provide the configurations, right? Using config map, or if it is a confidential information, you use secrets, right? And all those, there are different features that Kubernetes support in production, but those features are not available on a developer laptop if you are still using Docker Compose in your developer's laptop. So as a developer, you want to manage a lot of things, right? You want to manage the data that the applications process, and you want to manage the configurations. You want to pass information, configuration information to your application at the runtime. And in Docker Compose, it's just Docker container. That's not what you want in production. In production, you want to use a Kubernetes cluster and then provide the configuration as config map, or using some other method like secrets, etc. And the volume management are different in Docker and Kubernetes. A lot of things are much different from Docker and Kubernetes. So if you are using Docker Compose in development environment, even though it solves certain problem that the developer faced earlier, it is not a proper solution if in production you are using Kubernetes. So if you are using Kubernetes in production, your developer must have a Kubernetes cluster. That is where they should do their development. When they want to make the code change, when they want to change the application, they should be changing the application on a local Kubernetes cluster, preferably they have in their laptop. Or sometimes the laptop won't run the Kubernetes cluster due to some resource problem. In such case, you should also have a local Kubernetes cluster created somewhere in the cloud, and developer must have access to that. So that is the environment developer should be developing their application, not Docker Compose, right? They should be using the actual Kubernetes manifest to run application locally on their laptop inside a Kubernetes cluster that run locally in their laptop. And but it's not pretty straightforward, right? I mean, the developer are not experts in Kubernetes. They might not even know how to use Kubernetes and things like that. So there are always challenges, but nowadays it's not big challenges, right? Nowadays many people does that, right? Many people does that. You can actually run a Kubernetes cluster locally in a developer can run a Kubernetes cluster locally on his laptop, which is not very difficult today. There are different solutions available. For example, Kind, K3D, these are different tools that can run inside a developer laptop and create a Kubernetes cluster locally in their laptop that look much like a production Kubernetes cluster, and they can do all the development on that particular cluster, right? A developer, as they write the code, they can immediately start running their latest code into a local Kubernetes cluster, and that is awesome, right? But there are some challenges here. Your developers are not very familiar with Kubernetes, right? I mean, they don't understand Kubernetes very well. They have to go through Kubernetes secrets, they have to go through Kubernetes config map, a lot of other Kubernetes manifests which they don't like to do, right? I mean, so if you want your developer to start developing stuff on Kubernetes, you should make sure that they get a flawless environment where they don't really have to learn a lot of stuff, right? They don't need to go through the Kubernetes complexity. Still, they want to use Kubernetes. So, even that is possible today. There are a lot of tools and technologies available today which allows you to develop a local environment and then give those whatever you develop, you can give to your developers, and then with a single command in the developer laptop, they can initiate a complete local Kubernetes based environment. That is possible, right? That is possible. You might have to use different tooling. For example, you must be using some tool that can automatically look for the code changes in a developer laptop, create the containers, then run those containerized applications in a local Kubernetes cluster, and then give a feedback to the developer. Maybe give a URL for the developer to browse, or give a URL for the developer to do his testing and make sure that everything is working fine. Whatever he developed is running fine on a Kubernetes cluster. So those things should be automated, right? Those processes should be automated. Maybe the Kubernetes manifest developer does not need to look into too much, right? You should develop those manifests. You should develop them into some Helm packages, so that if developer has to make some config changes, they can actually easily modify the Helm values file. Or you should also automate the workflow of the developer. For example, developer write the code, and when he change the code, automatically this code get built into container images, and the application start running inside a Kubernetes cluster. The workflow should be automated. Developer should immediately get developer write the code, within few seconds he get a feedback, he get the preview of the application what they developed. That's how it should be. Developer should not go through a lot of technical complexities, and that is where you come in as a DevOps SRE guy. You would develop this. You would develop a local environment and put those inside a Git repository. For example, you would be using different tool to automate the workflow. You can use tools such as Skaffold, Tilt, or DevSpace. There are different tools available today that can automate the workflow. So you would be using one of those tools, and you would write the workflow as code and store that code inside a Git repository, and your developer can take that and that can execute that code, and then they get a local environment workflow ready. And that would do what the code does is it watch for developer code changes in the application, then take those applications, build them into containers, and run those containers inside a local Kubernetes cluster, and then give a feedback or a preview to your developers. So this whole process, if it is automated, then the developer can, without changing his workflow too much, he can get a production like environment in his laptop. That's what you want, right? And also sometimes developer want to modify the Kubernetes manifest, which is complicated, right? A Kubernetes manifest, if a developer has to modify all by themselves, for example, they want to create a environmental variable inside a container, or they might want to provide some confidential information to their application. Maybe the database password developer want to give it to some applications, or right, you want to dynamically pass some data, and in order to do that, you should modify the Kubernetes manifest, and developer don't like that. So in such case, you can always use tools such as Helm or customize different tools that allows you to split your Kubernetes manifest into the complicated one and the easy one. And the easy one, you allow your developer to modify. For example, any environmental variable modification, developer can do it all by themselves on a simple file, and rest of the complications you hide from them. So that is possible. So in many ways, if you did things right, you can give a proper local environment to your developers and allow your developer to do everything all by themselves without worrying about the complexities of Kubernetes. And that is possible today, and I will talk about different tools that you can explore. Docker, definitely Docker is what developers can use to build their application into containers, and they can use kind or K3D. These are local Kubernetes clusters that you can run on a laptop. They run inside Docker, and they provide a Kubernetes like environment to your developers. And there are tools such as then next tool is you want to automate the workflow. That what that means is developers should not bother about building the container images and running them in Kubernetes. They don't know how to do that. Somebody should automate this whole process, and in order to automate that process, you can use Scaffold, Tilt, or DevSpace. There are various tools available. You can use any one of them. It's not very important. And then probably developer want to make changes to the production. They want to make changes to the Kubernetes manifest. They might want to add some confidential information to the containers. They might want to provide some configuration to containers. So such cases, developer want to modify the Kubernetes manifest, then you allow them to do that, but avoid the complexities of writing complicated Kubernetes manifest. And in order to do that, you can use some config management tools such as Helm is a very good tool that is probably very developer friendly. You allow the developer to work on certain part of your Kubernetes manifest, what they need, right? The Kubernetes manifest, 95% of the places your developer don't need to even look at. Only 5% of the place in the manifest developer need to look at, right? So give them those files, give them a simple file which is not Kubernetes manifest, give them a simple text file or a simple YAML file where they can define the configurations, and then you take those files and generate the actual Kubernetes configuration and deploy them into Kubernetes. So in order to do that, there are tools such as Helm Customize that you can use. So what, as a DevOps SRE, what you need to build is a proper framework for the local development. Then give that to the developer, put them all together inside a Git repository. It could be a Helm charts, it could be a scaffold workflow, or it could be Docker files that allows you to do the image development, whatever they are. Put them all together in a Git repository, so your developer can just clone the code from the Git, and with a single command, they can build a local environment all by themselves, and they don't go through any complications to do that. And that's the most important point, right? So try to do this, and it will make a big difference. It will make a big difference, right? And that's pretty much I wanted to talk about today. And so please like this video if you think it helped you. Please support it by liking this video, and also subscribe to the channel. I'm going to come up with more videos like this that would help you plan your DevOps SRE stuff, right? So, and thank you, and see you next week, hopefully. Yeah, thanks.